kind of my original thinking. Maybe I put some of this together, but we have Confucius to thank. By the way, that's in his Analects if you want to look up that particular, not my interview question. I was deleted from the first edition of it. But his answer is in there. Rectify the language. This will draw on the work of Orwell, of Noam Chomsky, of Edward Herman, more recently George Lakoff, on the uses of language, the politics of language, because even using certain words is a political act. You know, if you're listening to NPR and they're talking about, as they were just the other day, a 20-minute segment on Yemen and the 2 bombs that were sent on a plane to the United States. This was on a program that calls itself Talk of the Nation. But as David Zupan pointed out in his introduction, we don't hear the voices of the nation in the guests. Occasionally, a caller gets on that has some dissident perspective. But the guests are all mainstream. They represent a point of view from A to B. So you have a choice. You know, General this or Lieutenant Colonel that. Should we have 100,000 troops in Afghanistan or 80,000? The debate is on. Call 1-800-NPR and voice your opinion. What? Where is the voice for total withdrawal? Where is the voice for whoever is responsible for the invasion and occupation of Afghanistan and Iraq, the bombing of Yemen and Somalia and Pakistan? Where are the war crime tribunals? Yeah. What? Whoa, now David, you're really going off the deep end. Now you're really showing you are part of the hate America crowd. Talking about Nuremberg? Hey, don't you know, dude? Justice is for the victors, not for the losers. That's why there were no Nuremberg tribunals for the crimes that the United States committed in Vietnam, Laos, and Cambodia, for the destruction of democracy in Iran, Guatemala, Chile, Dominican Republic, Grenada, and a host of other countries. Numerous invasions, almost non-stop, since 1945. Or the threat of invasion. Even right now, the United States is threatening Iran with military attack, in coded words, with the phrase, all options on the table. You know, it's a term of propaganda. What does it mean? It means I sit down with you, I'm the mafia boss, here's my AK-47 on the table, and I said, let's have a conversation with all options on the table. You get the hint pretty quickly that if you don't kneel and kiss my hand and praise me, it's, you know, you're going to get your brains blown out. And so, again, this is totally unreported anywhere in the media, even on the left, by the way. Even the threat of aggression is illegal under international law, under the UN Charter. It is not only the use of aggression, which the United States and Israel and other countries could be convicted of over and over and over again, but the threat of aggression is illegal under international law. And one of the terms, of course, that's always used, I just heard it the other day from Bob Gates, our war secretary. I don't like to use the euphemism defense secretary, because again, we're falling into their propaganda scheme. Oh, defense, we're defending ourselves. We're not aggressors. We don't, you know, we don't attack other countries. I was reading a report that the war secretary, and by the way, do any of you remember when the War Department was the War Department? Yeah. A few people. At the end of World War II, and Howard Zinn told me that when he had been a bombardier in World War II. He had flown numerous missions over Europe, and he was on the first raid of what his commanders called him jellied gasoline. That means napalm. The first raid ever over France, and he incinerated many, many civilians in one of those obscene terms that had not yet been invented, collateral damage. And he said, I knew something was up when they changed the name of the War Department to the Department of Defense. This indicated to him and to others at the time that propaganda was going to be in the foreground of pacifying the domestic population. It's important that they control us, because if we get out of control, then the whole empire becomes up for grabs. You know, the party could be over if the citizenry start asking, why are our tax dollars going for Trident submarines when we have no money to keep libraries open? Who are the Trident submarines protecting us from? The Taliban Navy? The Al-Qaeda Air Force? No, these are serious questions. What enemy are they being projected to be used against? The fact of the matter is, the imperial war machine has its own logic. It's driven by profits. It's not driven by jobs, by the way, which is another lie they tell the American people, even though they try and locate some component of weapon systems in every single congressional district. The fact of the matter is that military work is highly capital intensive. It's not labor intensive. So you can create many more jobs building a road or a recreation center or a library in a community than you can in assembling an F-16, for example. Another convenient fact that goes down Orwell's memory hole. So to get back to Gates, who in my view is a major war criminal and should be prosecuted. He's a former director of the CIA, by the way. He said that the United States had national interests in the islands in the South China Sea. Did any of you happen to notice this the other day? National interest. You know, this is the kind of a word that is invoked, and it is supposed to induce obedience and silence among the people who hear this term. Oh, it's in our national interest. Then we got to do that, right? We got to bomb Somalia because it's in our national interest. Panama, we got to invade Panama because it's in our national interest. Well, that explains everything. I feel much better myself knowing that I'm part of something, you know, just outside of my body. You know, it's Exxon Mobil, it's Chevron Texaco, it's Northrop Grumman, it's Lockheed Martin. I'm part of something much greater than my mere physical self. Well, in 1919, there was a great Austrian sociologist, unknown today, Joseph Schumpeter. He wrote an essay called The Sociology of Imperialisms. That's with plural S. And as you hear this, just substitute United States or America for every time you hear Rome or Roman, and see if this has any resonance with what's going on today or in your experience. There was no corner of the world where some interest was not alleged to be in danger or under actual attack. If the interests were not Roman, they were of Rome's allies. And when Rome had no allies, they would be invented. When it was utterly impossible to contrive such an interest, why then it was the national honor that was insulted. The fight was always invested with an aura of legality. Rome was always being attacked by evil-minded neighbors. The whole world was pervaded by a host of enemies, and it was Rome's duty to defend itself against their aggressive designs. When I found this particular quote from Schumpeter, he died around 1950, by the way, I found this anonymous graffiti from the 1820s in England. The law locks up the hapless felon who steals the goose from the common. The law locks up the hapless felon who steals the goose from off the common, but lets the greater felon loose who steals the common from the goose. And there's a great story from St. Augustine, I know you've all read it, City of God, Pirates and Emperors. It speaks a lot to what I'm talking about this evening. It's about the Emperor Alexander and a pirate. Alexander, who's got this vast naval armada, seizes a pirate, grabs him by the neck, pulls him on his ship and tells the pirate, "How dare you plunder and conduct piracy in my part of the ocean here?" And the pirate said, "Hey, look, Alexander, I'm just trying to feed my family, make ends meet. You know, yeah, I'm doing piracy, but what are you doing? You command the 7 seas. You loot and plunder the whole world. Yet you are called an emperor, and I am called a pirate." St. Augustine in City of God. Very interesting little piece there. Now let's go to the language issue, which I alluded to. National interest, we've discussed that. It's not anything in our national interest. It is in their interest, the interest of elites and the ruling class. And yes, we have to use such terms. It's not Marxist. It's just common sense to talk about ruling elites. That's another way they get people to shut up in this country. Oh, that's a lot of Marxist stuff. You know, that's a lot of, like, that's like so old news. But they're